Mission Christian Radio presents The Seventh Son, the story of King David of Israel, written for radio in 13 episodes by Colm Flanagan. Episode 11 is entitled The Rebellious Son, Part 2.
David the king and his son Absalom had been reconciled after Absalom had killed David's older son, Amnon. He'd done this because Amnon had raped Absalom's sister Tamar, and Absalom had taken revenge. All this fulfilled what Nathan the prophet had told David after David's own murder of Uriah, husband of Bathsheba. Bathsheba, now David's wife, had borne him a son who would succeed him as king, and whom the Lord had blessed. So, with the succession to the throne secured, I thought the kingdom could have some peace. I was wrong. I had forgotten the rest of Nathan's prophecy, and once again it would concern Absalom.
Ah, Joab, how are things with the army these days? Swords getting a bit rusty? Still, it's good to have peace at last.
Yes, if it lasts.
Fuck you army types. Always looking on the dark side. The army could do with the rest.
It's not the army I'm worried about.
So what is it?
Absalom.
Absalom? But he's reconciled to David, isn't he?
Oh, yes. On the surface. But I tell you what. Go down to the city gate and spend an hour or two there tomorrow. Then maybe you'll see why I'm worried about Absalom.
Very cryptic, Joab. Well, I'll maybe do as you say. I've nothing better to do.
Of course, I was curious to see what was going on. So the next day, I went down to the gates and, just as Joab had predicted, what I saw and heard worried me.
Good morning, my friend. Welcome to the city of Jerusalem. And where are you from?
I'm from one of our northern tribes, sir. I've come to petition the king. But who are you with your fine chariot and your servants all dressed up so smartly?
I'm Absalom, the king's son.
Oh, I didn't know.
Well, why should you? I may be able to help you with your petition to the king. Tell me about it, if you will.
I've a dispute with my neighbour. He's recently taken to grazing his sheep on my land. You see, my lord, it's like this. One day and that's how it's been for some time now, my lord. What do you think?
I see. Well, I think you've a very strong case.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
The problem is, the king doesn't really have anyone to listen to this sort of petition. To be honest, he's not really interested. If I were a judge now, I'd be fair and give good judgments after listening properly. But anyway, try the king if you wish, and I wish you well, my friend. And I hope that maybe I can be of some help in the future.
I stayed at the gate for some hours and watched this sort of performance happen a number of times. I made it my business to return the next day, and Absalom was there once more. I saw what Joab was worried about. Absalom was clearly intent on making himself popular with the ordinary people at his father's expense, and he was succeeding too. More and more folk began to speak of him as though he, not David, was the real leader of the country. After some time, when it didn't stop, I felt I had to tell my brother what was going on.
David, I really think you need to do something about Absalom.
Oh, really, brother? He's a bit vain, I grant you. I've heard about his chariot and his so-called fair judgments. No one takes it seriously, though. It's all just a bit of showmanship, that's all.
Well, I'm not so sure.
Well, he's coming to make a request of his own now anyway, so let's wait. Oh, look, here he is coming now. Come on, Absalom, my son, come on in.
Father, and my dear uncle, how are you both?
Oh, we're fine. What is it you want, Absalom? You said you had a request.
Father, I need to go to Hebron.
Hebron? Why's that?
Some years ago, when you and I were estranged and I was living in Gesher, I promised that if the Lord would bring me back to live in Jerusalem, I'd worship him in Hebron. It's a very special place, as you know.
Oh, yes, of course. That's where I was finally crowned king of this land. And it's where our ancestor Abraham and his family are buried. You know, maybe I should go with you. It's a while since I went there.
Oh, Father, I'd love to have you with me, but This is really something I need to do for myself, you see. Let's make a journey together some other time.
Well, as you wish, my son. By all means go.
Why now, Absalom?
Sorry, Uncle?
Well, why now? You've been in the city here for nearly 4 years. Why the delay?
Oh, I suppose it slipped my mind.
A promise to the Lord slipped your mind.
Oh, don't be too hard on him, brother. All of us forget things from time to time. Go ahead, Absalom, with my happy permission.
I knew I was right to be suspicious of this sudden religious fervour on Absalom's part. In fact, he took 200 men with him, and was then joined by one of David's own counsellors. He'd already sent messages to many northern tribes, and had arranged secretly for them to proclaim him king. In no time at all, the word went out, Absalom is king in Hebron. David took this news very badly. He completely misjudged the situation. I was shocked by this. He seemed to lose all spirit and panicked.
Let's get out of the city or none of us will escape, Absalom. Everyone's gone over to his side.
That's just not true, David. Many of us are loyal to you. The army, Joab is...
The army, they could change their allegiance tomorrow. Come on, let's hurry. He might catch us on the way.
David, what's all the fuss? All the commotion? What's happening? Why the panic?
Bathsheba, I'm leaving. I must go. I'm in danger. But you and some of the other women should stay. I'll be a fugitive again, and that's no life for a woman with children. Look after our son Solomon, won't you? And the others.
But David, you just can't leave us. Who knows what will happen?
Oh, you'll be all right. Absalom's fight isn't with you.
David, no! Don't you dare leave us!
Goodbye.
But her pleas went unheard, such was David's panic. I knew he was thinking of Nathan's prophecy that his family would fall apart. He seemed to have forgotten all the Lord's other promises in his desire to flee the city. He'd even left the ark, the sacred chest, behind. It was as though he'd given up the fight before it even begun. But if David had given up, others hadn't.
We have to hurry. Let's get away
Look,
from here.
we've got to fight back and raise the army.
I agree. But look at the state he's in.
have to go.
He's half mad.
He's still the Lord's anointed and this upstart son isn't. I have a plan. Now let me talk to David. Your Majesty, listen to me. It's important that you listen to me.
Somehow, Joab got David calmed down and began to develop a plan to bring Absalom down.
Long live King Absalom! Long live the true king!
Aren't you Hushai, one of my father's trusted counsellors?
I was, your majesty, but it is obvious to me the Lord has chosen you to rule. It seems right for me to serve you, just as I once served your father David.
Good. You're welcome. But I've some business with David's women first. Then we'll talk strategies.
Absalom was determined to humiliate David in any way he could, and it was the women David had left behind that he used to emphasize his new status as king. In public, he put up a tent and slept with them one by one in it. He left no one in any doubt that he was the new leader of Israel. David seemed powerless to do anything to stop him. Then Absalom took counsel from his followers, among them Hushai.
Ah, Hushai, I've called you for advice.
Willingly, your majesty.
I'm being told that the best move to finally defeat my father is to attack immediately, while he's still running scared. What do you say?
I'm not so sure. You know, your father and his followers, men like Joab, are very experienced. They've fought many wars. They may be running, but they'd be vicious if cornered, just like rats. To attack them, you'd certainly suffer casualties, and that might make some folk start to lose heart. What I would do is this. Gather more men from all over the country until you've got an overwhelming force. Then attack David wherever he is. That way will bring him down, just the way you pull a wall down to rubble. That's my advice.
It sounds good to me. Yes, that's what we'll do.
Of course, Hushai's advice was calculated to delay things, to give David the time he and Joab needed to regroup. Hushai was working for David all along. He sent a message to David that Absalom wouldn't be following him. So David gathered strength and found, as I'd said, that there were many people who didn't want Absalom as their king at all. Eventually, David's army was as big as Absalom's, and they met for a decisive battle near a forest. Just before it, David addressed his senior commanders.
Leaders of the army, we go into battle. Joab, Abiathar, Ittai, fight well today. Defeat our enemies. But Absalom is still my son. Capture him. He is not to be harmed.
We'll see about that.
The battle was fierce, but David's men gradually got the upper hand. In the forest, Absalom was riding, pursued by some of David's soldiers.
If I can just get away from here. I'm stuck up here. Help, help! Get me down, someone!
Absalom had been jerked off his mule by a big forked branch of a tree. He hung there, helpless, legs dangling above the ground. Then...
Well, what have we here?
Joab! Please, cut me down!
Oh, your majesty, I'll do better than that. Take this. And this. And this. That's for the trouble you caused your father, Absalom. He's not here to help you now. Right, men, cut him down and finish him off and dig a nice deep pit for him somewhere.
But didn't the king say he wasn't to be harmed?
Did he? Oh dear, I must have missed that bit of what he said. Well, it's a bit late now. I think he's finished. Anyway, it's my responsibility. There'll be no more rebellion from this one. Get on with it.
Yes, sir.
The end of Absalom's rebellion finished the issue of succession for the time being. David once again confirmed that his successor was to be Bathsheba's son, Solomon. It wasn't to be the last rebellion against his rule, but none of the others seriously threatened him the way Absalom's had done, and Joab, often working behind the scenes, engineered the downfall of most of those who dared challenge the king. Solomon, a serious-minded young man, watched Joab with some interest, and I got the feeling that he thought him a dangerous man who was too quick to take the law into his own hands. If Solomon does become king, I thought, I don't give much for Joab's survival. But it wasn't my problem. And there was no doubt that Joab was totally committed to David's rule, and for the time being that would suffice. But then a rash act on David's part threatened to undo all the work his loyal followers had done. It was all over a piece of what appeared on the face of it to be a simple administrative job.
In episode 11 of The Seventh Son, the narrator and seventh son was played by John Lander and Absalom, David's son, by Peter Richardson. Other parts were played by members of the Commission Radio drama team. The play was produced in Belfast at Commission Studios by Colm Flanagan. Episode 12 is entitled The Numbers Game.